Howdy, welcome to the Upland Nation podcast. Scott Linden here, your guide to the uplands. Or at least people who know more about it than I do, and that's a good thing. Of course, you'd all qualify for that as well. Anyway, great show in store for you. We're talking to Todd Agnew of Craney Hill Kennels, spaniel training. But there will be something of interest to every breed and every breed owner because we're talking about the uplands. So if you're a Labrador guy or a Springer guy, it doesn't matter. And then all sorts of other dog care and shooting tips from the real world that are relevant to everybody. So hang around for that. But that's not all. We'll organize our rigs, well, as much as we can for this season. I'm already in that mode. I'll tell you more about it later. And then you will share how you celebrate a hunt, what you put in the cooler and then in your mouth after a successful day of field. They're all successful. I shouldn't say it that way. Every day afield is a successful day. I don't care what you say about how many birds are in the bag. So we'll celebrate our celebration. And it's all made possible by Sage and Breaker Gun Care Products, Pointer Shotguns, Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, TrulockChokes Tubes, MidwayUSA.com, ProPlan Sport from Purina, and HiViz Shooting Systems. Well, you know the phrase, happy wife, happy life. It's true for dogs as well, but around here it starts with all the chores. And my list just keeps getting longer, maybe yours too. This time of year, maybe the fishing, maybe the kids' soccer games get in the way. But we're trying to get ahead of the curve so that in the fall we have a little bit more free time. Yeah, well, that's the theory, and it seems to be working. But the happy life part is really coming true. I'm working with Flick. Most days of the week he's getting bird exposures. When it's too hot and dry, I try to avoid it. It's just a recipe for disaster. But most of the time, we'll get a bird or two in front of him. And I have forgotten, and I've talked about this before, and maybe you know it. If you do a lot of bird work with your dog, you notice what a good mood he is in the rest of the day and even the next day. And I don't think dogs have a lot of long-term memory. They have some, obviously, or we couldn't train them. But I think he realizes that the human is the bringer of birds. The clairvoyant knows where they are. And if I just trust him and suck up to him, I'm going to get another bird contact. Yeah, he becomes a little bit more cooperative. He pays a little bit closer attention. Maybe there's a little bit more desire to please. And I thank my pigeons, and then the wild quail we have out here, for all of that. So there's a lesson in that. If you have birds or if you have access to birds of one sort or another, then see if it works for you too. Speaking of working for you, yeah, my favorite subject. On the social media a few days ago, I put up a picture of my own beer. I brew my own once in a long while. This one I called Puppy Pale Ale, and I have a wonderful picture on the label. It's my wife is an abstract painter, so she painted a portrait, if you will, of Flick, and it's hilarious. If you want to look at it, you'll see she tends to capture all of my dogs. I'm looking at 3 of them now. I'm looking at 3 versions of a wire hair portraits that are quite abstract, but you could still tell they're dogs. Anyway, she captures their primary characteristics. And then there is Flick in the background staring at me. And I asked the question, hunt over, dogs watered, guns put up, time for a tall, cold one, or a peaty single malt. What's your post-hunt libation? Oh, man, that was a topic that was worth discussing. That's for darn sure. Lance Larson. Yes, and by the way, thank you, Lance. I used both of your ale horn tumblers. Thank you for carving them. And in fact, the one with Flick on the outside is in my new hunting rig. Anyway, No, I do not drink and drive. But anyway, Lance says, bourbon and Coke, sitting in a chair between my two dogs. Yeah, that might be the perfect setting. Felton Jenkins, yeah, Felton, I remember the days. 6-pack of that famous beer from, quote, France, unquote, Rainier, Sacre Bleu. I met the guy. Remember, if you're old enough to remember the guy who was the border guard in the Rainier commercials, did a project with him many years ago. His first name was Dick. I don't remember the rest. Gary Forrest says, time to reflect on the day with some Eagle Rare and my pups chilling beside me. You know, I detect a trend here. Jay Shire says, they always have Yuengling. Man, I get a Yuengling whenever I go to the Midwest just because I can't get it anywhere else. Although I can get some pretty cool stuff. In fact, I'm also partial to the only 13-year-old single malt scotch I've ever seen. Craigalachie. If you find it, grab it. Just for that alone. But it's a pretty good, well-balanced, a little peat, but a little bit of everything else. It's a Speyside style. Jay also has a little bit of everything. Tennessee whiskey, bourbon. He's kind of a bartender, Jay. Good job. Ray Kernet, myself, I like to put a couple long necks on ice. Nothing like a cold one. Don't rub it in after chasing wild ringnecks in eastern Washington. Yeah, absolutely. Steve Selvig, you know, you can pick your nose and you can pick your friends, but I'd rather pick your friends. Steve hunts with a group of bourbon connoisseurs. Yes, indeed. But when he's supplying, it's Four Roses. You know, that's not so bad. There are people who think Four Roses is a pretty darn good drink. Larry Davenport, also smart. Whatever my hunting partner is pouring, usually rum. And I've never heard of this one. I'm not a rum guy. Ron Zacapa XO. Or Woodford Reserve Bourbon. Yeah, I'm also good with that. Kyle Broadfoot, a hoppy IPA. Right after. Yeah, gotta rehydrate, etc., etc. Good bourbon for me and a beer for Archie, says Michael Augello. Augello. I'm sorry. I'm going to start reading my wearing glasses. Oh, yeah. And then just a lesson to everybody, of course. Carlos Lopez says, an ice cold Coke, because usually he has a bit of driving to do. Yep, good on you. HRCH UH Wildfire Deacon says, Bud Light the past 40 years. This year, Coors Light. Virgil's root beer is Stillwater Dave's libation of choice. David Kolner has an entire matrix. If he's hunting brookies and grouse, it's Four Roses. Browns and Doodles, Woodford Double Oaked. Rainbows and Stocked Pheasants, Maker's Mark, and Lightning Trout, it is George Dickel. Would you call me a little bit strange if I've had all of those? Not at the same time. Anyway, there are some great suggestions in there, if you're looking for a change-up, that's a great way to do it. Thank you, everybody who kicked in on that one. I can't get to all of you. That's how many there were. What does that say about us? Oh, my. Well, we are brought to you in part by Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School. Now, these folks hunt. If you need lessons, if you want to shoot better, and I know a lot of you do, you need to take some lessons. But you need to take lessons from people who actually go out there and follow dogs and shoot at wild birds. At Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, they do just that. They're over there in Western Oregon, about near let's just call it the Salem metro area. They're hunters. They know what works on the range and in the field, and they stock both in the way of shotguns, but they also know how to teach. So if you're looking for a new hunting gun that will also perform for you at the range, they've got a rental fleet of 40-plus guns, so you can kind of, play the field such as it is. Learn more about their rental fleet, their hunting guns, and their hunting shooting instructors, all at midvalleyclays.com. That's midvalleyclays.com. And yes, we're on the Pro Plan. Purina Pro Plan Sport is now my dog food of choice. Well, Flick's dog food of choice. Yeah, he tells me it tastes pretty good. I'll take his word for it. But it also does some great things for him. You know, so many most champion field trial and hunt test dogs are eating Pro Plan Sport. It's got a concentrated nutrition formula that optimizes oxygen metabolism. What does that translate to? Increased endurance in the field. Lots of protein. We're using the 30-20 formula. Real meat as the first ingredient. And then amino acids that will help with muscle recovery. Yeah, it's all available. All the science, all the formulas, and there are a lot of them at ProPlansport.com. Welcoming back to the Upland Nation podcast, probably one of the most active and knowledgeable, and I think I'm going to call it insightful spaniel trainers I've ever met. Todd Agnew with Craney Hill Kennels, champion field trialer, upland hunter. The guy knows his stuff. Todd, welcome back to the Upland Nation podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's always fun to talk with you, number one, because I want one of your cocker puppies someday, and I don't know how I'm going to be able to, sneak it into the house. After it's into the house, it's a no-brainer. She'll fall for it. But, but
ask for forgiveness, don't ask for permission.
Thank you. So what's new in your life?
Nothing really ever changed here. The names of the dogs.
Exactly.
Obviously, it's a continual rotation of dogs coming and going, but it's pretty routine. You get up, work dogs, and try to solve problems, and try to keep moving them ahead, and dealing with clients and all that good stuff, and a lot of travel as always.
Yeah. It's funny. You said it's pretty routine, but then you said try to solve problems, and they're different every time. I was having a talk with a musician friend of mine. We were talking about playing recording sessions. And, for the most part, if you're playing, for John Williams or, anybody else, you're doing a movie soundtrack, you're playing whole notes. You're playing the same quiet, boring stuff all day. But it's not, because every once in a while you walk into the studio and there's something on the stand that nobody else could play. And so you there you go. You're in problem solving mode. And you deal with this every day. I mean, that must be part of either the thing you wake up in a cold sweat over or the thing you anticipate every morning.
Well, I think it's, I think anyone that is striving to be better in all walks of life certainly is looking for challenges, and in the effort to, constantly try to hone our communication with the dogs, because I really think that's the key to all things dog.
Yeah.
But, anyone that is striving for that, I think they're looking for the nuances and some of the differences. The cold sweats are, when you're going through the phase and you can't figure it out, then, those are the cold sweats, and, that ebbs and flows, based on how things are going. But, we get paid to figure things out.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think history has shown that some of the old school stuff is still valid. However, we just know a whole lot more about dog psychology and so forth. And so there are a lot of other ways to skin the cat that we know about compared to in days past. Just wish, the public understood that, you can't have it all.
Yeah.
Nothing gets solved for the long haul in a quick time frame.
Well, I want to talk about that in particular. You mentioned communication, and I know a lot of times you talk about relationship building with a dog, and we're going to jump into that. But the first thing is the first thing, and that is that you said patience as well. And I think most people have a hard time maintaining their patience when the dog is, for lack of a better term, acting up. The dog is not able to do what they want it to do. if you wanted to help us be more patient, what would you do? Zen?
Look in the mirror. Look in the mirror. I mean, just look in the mirror.
Yeah.
That's really what everyone has to do, what they have to do. You're dealing with a living creature that's not human.
Yeah.
And as much as, society is trying to make these dogs part of the family and so forth. And that's all great. Dogs have generally better life than they once had and all those good things. But the reality is it is a different species, and it learns differently and understands differently. It reads things differently. And if you can't, consistently look at you as being the problem, then I think, it can be a tough road. And everybody, knows somebody that, was fortunate. They had a dog that was truly gifted, not just, physically in the field, but inwardly, mentally. Usually that means it's a dog that can be very forgiving of our mistakes. And, when you see that, it looks awfully easy.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of the dogs are not like that, or they're like that on some things, but not others. And so it's very easy being human to think that we have it figured out, but it's very rarely that the dog has it figured out the way we think they do.
Yeah, we had some encounters with a border collie a few days back, and the first thing everybody wants to say is they're so smart, and maybe they are, but they may just think differently than a Great Dane.
I think it's a dog.
Yeah, exactly.
They're only given so many ways to learn and to understand, and I don't really think any dogs are smart or any dogs are dumb. I just think they're a dog. Yeah. But I do think some dogs are quicker at putting associations together. Yet they all learn through association, but I do think some are quicker. Yeah. Border collies being one of them. And, you mentioned the cockers earlier. I think they are as well. And that's truly what makes them so dangerous, because they're also putting together associations we're not interested in them having. So.
I say quite often, even now, a dog learns all the time. Sometimes they learn what you want them to.
Well, I think that, most times they don't know what we think. We think we're teaching them one thing. A classic example is, we deal with our seminars and people come in and, okay, does your dog know to sit? Yep. Okay, so show me. So they start walking and they stop and tell the dog to sit, and the dog sits. They're, okay, this time don't stop, keep moving. And the dog never sits.
Yeah.
So really what you thought you were teaching the dog to sit with that verbal cue, and in reality, the dog learned to sit by you stopping.
Yeah.
So it's a very simple thing, but that's what happens a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned it, and I've written over and over again on how a dog thinks. I think. What is your take on that? Because you've alluded to a lot of things that tell us that it's different than we really believe, than we humans believe it is. How does a dog think?
I think it's pretty well documented that it is through association. And then there's discussion about what that time frame is for the associations to be made. Let's, for argument's sake, say somewhere around a second. Well, later on in life, when the dog really has that particular association down, I believe you have more time than that 1 second. But to link those, like to link the treat and the clicker, I think it is relatively quick. But I think the hardest part about the way they think is that we take, I don't know, let's arbitrarily say 5 events, and we call that one thing. Let's call it healing.
All right.
Okay. But meanwhile, to the dog, there's 5 different actions that go into the act of healing. Mm-hmm. And so we routinely are overcorrecting or blaming the dog because the dog's not healing, yet the dog is telling us they don't actually have all 5 of those components down, right? So That's where the patience, and you have to, I believe you have to, we tell people, write it down. Whatever it is you want your dog to do, write down what you want them to do, and then start breaking it down. And if you can break it down into 4 or 5 steps to do that, then go and break every one of those steps down another 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
And if you work at it, you can really, suddenly that simple task is 15 or 20 little things that all have to be taught to get the final product that you're looking for in a consistent and clean manner.
You're absolutely true. Now, the big question is, I know people who will say, okay, once you've broken it down, teach the last step first. You think there's any validity to that, and then work backwards from that?
I've never done it that way. I can't comment. Just, what I do is I never try to link the steps. I teach everything independently. And when all of the various components are clean, or the way I'm happy with, I then start to link the components.
Okay, so and we'll get deeper into this. I really want to talk about steadiness with flushing dogs, and we'll go we'll go a little deeper into what you just talked about in a minute. Because we all know heel is a good thing, obedience is a good thing, and we got to teach all of that. But I know we don't have all day to talk about this, so we'll do one that's more relevant to the field. But first off, let's start with your operation. Tell me a little bit about where you are and what you do on a day-to-day basis, and then what happens in the summer and the fall, because I know you are an active field trialer and you're helping other people in that world as well. And we'll talk later about why you think that's so important. So tell me about Craney Hill Kennels.
As we discussed before, we're in Georgia for most of the year. Christina got sick of living where it was cold, so it's pretty simple. I could move to Georgia or not. So in either case, I'm in Georgia, and and it's fine. It's we're in rural Georgia. Everybody leaves us alone, and if you train dogs, that's pretty important. We have a pretty standard routine: up early, starting to play with dogs. We almost always have a puppy in the house, or 2 or 3. Just we're always buying puppies, having puppies, that type of thing. So early in the morning, make some coffee, and then I'm doing clicker and treats with really young puppies, getting them going, linking some behaviors and so forth. Then, when it starts to get daylight out, get out, start getting going, dogs loaded up, depending on what I'm working on that day. And when it's warm out, certainly trying to get to the field right away. When it starts to get hot, then we tend to be doing more drill, yard, retrieving type stuff. But as far as running, upland hunting type of activities, we're trying to do that early. Now in the winter, of course, we do that all day right up till last light, making use of the best time of the year. As far as the calendar, field trials, really they're pretty much year round these days. But we just got back from Maine, and that's it for us until September. So we had a little bit of a reprieve on the travel and so forth with that. So most of those dogs are, headed home or are already home, and we'll get a little stress break, go home and hopefully just relax. Owners tend to want to play with the dogs a lot.
There you go.
And, and I get it. It's, it's their dog. And I mean, it shouldn't be a tool. It should be something they enjoy to be around and to play with. But, living on the road and on the field trial circuit is pretty stressful for dogs. And so when they do go home, it's our preference that they just try to chill out and give them a mental break, just like any of us would need after an intense time frame. But then come September, we'll be up in Michigan grouse hunting and then hitting the trial circuits. I like to grouse hunt. It's my favorite type of hunting these days. But the other reason to go up there is that instead of 12-15 hours to the trials from Georgia, there's a lot of trials within 4 or 5 hours, so
nice.
It saves a little bit on the travel for us, and we'll be hot and heavy with that right up until nationals in November, and then amateur nationals in December, and the Cocker nationals in December. So and then the calendar will turn and it'll all start all over again. So.
Well, let's talk about the important stuff here. You love grouse hunting. What is it about that grouse hunting that you like so much?
Well, I think, growing up in New England
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
around the woods, it, feels like home. So, there's some of that. And I think as all of us get older, we become a little bit more romantic with some of those
Yeah,
things and
yeah.
some of the, the old writings. Of course, I don't find it to be anything like the old writings, but, we kind of blink that part. And, but then, the weather is so favorable and leaves changing and all those types of things. We were out on the prairies with pheasants for so many years. And although I do like that, and now when we go to do that, I do find it enjoyable again, but having done that and guided hunters for, so many years, I just wouldn't have to do that again, So this became vacation, for Christine and I
Sure.
really, it was our mental break. And we've just now transferred that the people we're working with, then they come up and train dogs in the natural environment with us.
Hmm.
And I think that is really important because we tend, our field trial group tend to be newer people. Most of them have never hunted before.
Mm.
So it's really an opportunity. I mean, their whole lifestyle has changed and they get to come see and work their dogs in a real environment. And now they're starting to hunt. And
Yeah,
now our
yeah.
group tends to go off, group up and go hunt amongst themselves where I'm not even involved, which is great.
Yeah, don't take it personally, right?
Yeah, but it's also, I mean, it's, so it's the effort to kind of build a community of enjoyment because, the field trials, has a lot, ups and downs with many more downs than ups.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's a long year. So if you just, sitting around waiting for the 2 weeks you get to go hunt or whatever it is for any one person, if there's a community where it's a lifestyle, it really does become a year-round activity.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's enjoyable.
Yep, we're starting up around here as well with our club. So, of course, it's going to get really hot. So,
Yeah, right.
okay, let's jump back to something that I think is a real foundation for everything else, and I think you think it too, and that is building a relationship with your dog. I mean, what do you mean by that?
Well, for us, I really get sick of the whole alpha dog thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Not that I disagree with it, because I don't,
Mm-hmm.
but it really bothers me that overwhelmingly the only piece that gets advertised and discussed is the human being the dominant in the
Yeah,
relationship.
yeah.
And I just think that's overblown because it leaves out the other equally important part, which is, the alpha dog provides safe hunting habitat with good game. It controls the harmony of the group. It's not all about discipline.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think there's an important piece that's been left out over the years. And I think we as humans really take that to be tough on dogs, not just physically, but mentally.
Yeah.
So for us, I think relationship building, we try to view it more as respect.
Mm-hmm.
And I think consistency is the
Yeah.
key there.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that, dogs, they're remarkable in how much pressure they can take if it's fair and just.
Yes.
And it can only be fair and just if yesterday is the same as today and it's the same as tomorrow. I mean, they're just, they thrive in consistency. They struggle if things change on a day-to-day basis. So all of our relationship building really is done in the first year. A lot of, predominantly clicker and treats,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of work
Mm-hmm.
on the table, getting the puppies to, solve little problems on their own. Like, Todd's standing a certain way. What the heck does that mean?
Yeah.
Get them to just keep trying behaviors until they find one that works, and then just keep at it through repetition. So that, I mean, that's really, we're trying to build a human bond, not a Todd bond.
I get it, and good point. By the way, speaking of Todd, that's Todd Agnew with Craney Hill Kennels, and you can learn more about this philosophy, and there's a lot there at spanieltraining.com. I'm Scott Linden. This is the Upland Nation podcast. In the introduction to the podcast, I talked about what we're working on here, and it jibes exactly with what you're talking about. I joke about it, but Flick thinks I am the bird provision machine. whenever a bird arrives in his life, it's because I made it arrive, and that's just part of that whole idea of what you just described. The consistency thing we all have to work on more, I'm sure, but the whole idea of trust and respect is right in there as well. So love that. And fairness. I used fairness as a term in my book a while back, and somebody thought I was nuts until I explained it to them.
Well, I think that's how you develop respect.
Yeah.
I mean, you just think of us as humans.
Yeah.
We may not like being reprimanded. We may not like having to do, some crummy job, but somebody's got to do it. And generally, we can all accept those things, even if we don't like it, if we think that we're being treated fairly. And I think it's the same for the dogs. They can deal with a lot of unpleasantness if they feel it's fair. Yeah.
I'm with you 100%. Todd, you're on the right track. Keep up the good work. This is the time of year when everybody's got a young dog. They're trying to do all the things they think need to be done. They hope that their dog's going to be a rock star first time out of the crate this early season. What are the things that that people forgot to do or need to do that you don't think they're doing with a very young dog, say in midsummer?
Are we talking a new dog to them?
Yeah, new dog. They just picked it up from you guys.
Oh, from us.
Or anybody. But here he is, peeing on the floor and looking at you.
They want to go to the field.
Yeah.
I mean, they want to go to the field, and I think you gotta give these dogs a reason to want to be with you.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And more often than not, people give the dogs total freedom on some level.
Yeah.
And then when they want them to be with them, it's some, domineering situation because the dog wants to run around and they struggle to get the dog gathered up. And so that you're going at the dog. Well, why would the dog want to come to you? Okay. So I think sitting on the porch with a handful of treats, walking around, always having treats in your pockets. I think bending down, becoming warm and inviting, letting the if it's a puppy, jump on you. I'm not, one of these, you should never let the dog jump on you. I just, if you're asking the dog to do it, I think it's fine. If the dog's being belligerent, that's different.
Yeah.
So, give the dog a reason to want to be with you, because if you have a dog, and what I mean by that is if you have a dog that genetically is what we are looking for.
Yeah.
Okay. Then there's going to be times in that dog's life where the genetics override what we want, and the genetics are pretty powerful. So it's our squirrel runoff, or a bird flush, or anything that the dog just can't even think, genetics take over. Well, that's really powerful, and it's really hard to convince the dog to do something that goes against its genetics. Well, if the dog doesn't have any reason in its life to be attached to you, good luck with that. Now you're left with purely punishment. Mm-hmm. So I think young dogs, overwhelmingly, it should be about forming that relationship, but you got to move that relationship around. So you hear it all the time. Oh, my dog's so well behaved at home. Of course it is.
Yeah.
There's no distraction. No distraction. Yeah. So if you go to the field and you have treats, and just sit down in the grass, let the dog find you, give it treats, love it up, give the dogs a reason to be interested in you. Yeah,
and food works great.
It should. If it doesn't, starve them more. I'm not kidding.
No, there's the cliche I've heard a lot recently, and I'm a big believer, is a tired dog is a trainable dog. Oh, okay. But I also, I'm going to add one, and that is a hungry dog pays attention.
Absolutely.
But what about other things? We can't always walk around with a pocket full of kibble. So what other things do you use to, especially in a younger dog relationship, what do you do to cement that relationship?
We're using, like I said, we're using a lot of clicker.
Yeah.
And at some point, they don't get a treat every time we use the clicker.
Uh-huh.
But we're never going for walks with young dogs without the clicker.
Yeah.
You said it earlier about the birds.
Yeah.
So, it's amazing that if every time you called your dog and he looked at you, I don't care if he's 30 yards away, 40 yards away, and you threw a bird out of your vest behind you,
Mm-hmm.
it wouldn't take long for every time you call that dog for him to snap around and look.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So, it's just using what is of interest to the dog.
Yeah.
How can I use it to get me where I want to be with the dog? So you take like here. Okay. Well, all you want for here is the dog to generally come back towards you. So if I can throw a clip wing behind me or something, and that gets the dog excited to start coming back to you,
Mm-hmm.
well, you're working towards your goal.
Yeah.
Don't throw it away from you. You're working against your goal. So you just think about, again, this gets to that, write it down on paper. What is it you're trying to accomplish?
Yep.
And then break it down. And in all of those, the more you can get the dog to think that it's what it wants to do anyway.
Yeah.
Why do we throw treats in a crate? Like, no dog wants to go in the crate. But if the dog starts to learn there's treats in there, well, now the dog has decided for himself going into the crate is a good thing. Well, that makes our life easier. So even with these young dogs before the season, or I don't care if the dogs came out of our training program, it behoove everybody to think about it. What can I do on a regular basis to encourage the dog to be offering behaviors that ultimately you're going to want?
Yeah, the operative, I think the best way to sum up what you've just said, Todd Agnew, is we need to think about how the dog thinks. When we're doing things, we need to give it a moment and go through the process. Then we'll become slightly more analytical about it and probably more strategic in the long run. Am I reading you right?
Yeah, you'll become more consistent.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of people, we've all trained with with different people, and people that come train with us, trust me, some days I'm willy-nilly as well.
Yeah.
I'm human like everybody. But the less you can be willy-nilly, the more often that you can go and think, okay, this is what I want to accomplish, and this is how I'm going to do it. Just over time, you will be more consistent, and then the dog will be less confused on what that body language is, what that tone of voice is.
Yeah.
It's really the benefit of the clicker is the tone doesn't change.
Yeah. And I'm promised nobody I'm going to go down that rabbit hole today. The clicker is a separate discussion, but y'all get the idea there. Todd, you get a moment here to put your feet up. I get a moment to pay the bills. So stick around, everybody. We're going to talk more about that kind of stuff. We're going to talk about hunting strategies. We're going to talk about why hunt tests don't get it done. Todd, there's your assignment during the commercial break. We are brought to you in part by MidwayUSA.com. Yeah, they carry just about everything you'll need. Yeah, that's where I'm going these days. 20,000 of their products shipped free. They've got just about everything you're going to need. And they got everything from every manufacturer in every category. My eyes blur every time I go to MidwayUSA.com, and that's a good thing. And the best thing about it is they are also big about customer satisfaction and service. They just won the 2022 BizRate Platinum Circle of Excellence Award. That's based on customer feedback. So, your friends, people like us, they think Midway USA is all about taking care of their customers. Okay, lesson learned. And one of the things you might be able to find when you do your shopping is HiViz Sights, HiVizSights.com, HiVizSights.com. They're original equipment manufacturers for many of the big brands that you know and love, Ruger, Benelli, Browning, Remington. What do they know that you don't know about sights and shotguns and how they might be able to help you shoot? Go to HiVizSights.com and learn more about their light pipe technology, all the other versions of shotgun sights that might help you in the long run. And welcome back to the Upland Nation podcast. Mr. Todd Agnew, Craney Hill Kennels, spanieltraining.com. I know I left you with an assignment, and maybe we should just jump right into that. What's the problem with hunt tests versus field trials?
Well, I think a lot of it, like the field trials, depends on who the judges are and where you're going.
Yeah, forth, I know.
Right? But eliminating that subjectivity, I can only comment on the spaniel hunt test.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, and the problem I have with the spaniel hunt test is that it is essentially a retriever test.
Oh.
So if you're going to be a master hunter, then there's 4 components to it. One is a field piece where the dog at a master level is supposed to be steady the wing and shot, go out, find birds, make the retrieves. Then the second piece, and not necessarily in this order, but the second piece is the dog has to make a single water retrieve.
Mm-hmm.
Third piece is the dog has to make a simple land blind. They call it a hunt dead, but generally there's something out there, go get it. And it's usually through some type of transition of cover. Yeah. So either out of the field into the woods or something. And it's modest. It's 50 yards or something or another. It's not 100 yards, it's 50, 60, let's say. And then the last thing is some type of a water blind, which tends to be 40 or 50 yards, and you start off right at the water's edge. So there's 3 of those 4 things are retrieving oriented.
Yes.
So if you're going to be a master spaniel hunter, I have a problem with that, because the number one thing the spaniel has to do is find game.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then if you're fortunate enough to shoot it, it needs to retrieve it. But only 25% of the test really is about finding, questing game.
Yeah.
Okay. So I philosophically have a problem with that, aside from any of the, weak judging and, not upholding a standard. Yeah. The other problem with the spaniel hunt test is that I don't even know now, but maybe there's 16 breeds or whatever it is that can participate.
Mm-hmm.
So, they'll let labs in, which is fine. I don't care about the breeds, but they all write their own description of what that dog is supposed to be doing as a hunting dog. So a bunch of those breeds, they'll write in there that it's common for the dog to hesitate on the flush. Well, you know what? These are flushing dogs. They shouldn't be hesitating. That's just not what they should be doing.
Black or white.
That's right. So now they can adjust the scores and so forth. But if you allow the breeds, all the breeds, including the Springer Spaniels, if you allow them to write flaws into the acceptable performance, that's a problem for me.
Yeah.
That's a problem for me. So oftentimes we'll see, we trained a couple of clumbers. They were fun. I mean, we did some work for some person. I mean, I don't want to own the dogs, but you could go and you can enjoy it.
Yeah.
But you can't go hunt wild birds with them.
Huh.
You can't. I walked about 200 yards on this gravel bed in the grouse woods. I watched the grouse walk in front of us 40 or 50 yards. For 200, the bird never once felt pressured. It only finally got up because we hit a road and it ran out of cover. And now the thing is that Clumber never lost that bird. He trailed it the entire time. But, I mean, he can't ever catch up to the bird.
Oh, my God. I'm sorry if you're the one person listening who owns a Clumber Spaniel. Maybe yours is different, and more power to you.
It's just, I use that as an example because I firsthand knowledge with that dog. And that was a dog, I mean, if you look at some of our past videos, we call them Sasquatch. I love that. I had a blast with that dog. But it's just, there's another pro, a very accomplished Spaniel pro. And he had told me one time with the different levels, junior, senior, and so forth. I said, what do you think of the junior? And you got all these categories for judging. And he said, I think it's really simple. Did the dog improve the hunt or make the hunt worse? If it improved the hunt, it passes. If it made the hunt worse, it fails. And I think the spaniel hunt test on many, many fronts has forgotten who cares what the breed is. Number one thing should be, can you hunt the dog?
Okay.
If you can't hunt the dog, it shouldn't pass.
Well, let's go to that, but first, it's not exclusive to flushing breeds. I was planning birds for a hunt test for a breed specialty club, and I won't mention the breed, but it sounds like an ice cream from Southern Europe. And I was, you plant the birds, you run and hide behind the trees or something, then you watch the dog work the birds until you doze off. And it happened more than once that day. But anyway, so what about a field trial versus that? You say that if a field trial would have more of the things that are relevant to a hunting dog situation, a field dog.
Well, it would, because instead of every dog being able to be happy and go home with a ribbon, you're competing against each other.
Yeah.
So there's only one winner.
Yeah.
And then usually there's second, third, and fourth.
Yep.
But not always.
Yeah.
They don't give them all. So even if it's a 50 dog trial, let's say out in the Midwest or Rocky Mountains where they have bigger trials, even if there's 50 dogs and they were overwhelmingly poor, they still have to compete against each other. Okay, so that in itself, competition breeds people working harder to get better. Hence, the dogs will continue improving. Nothing's absolute. That. It's, we've won trials where our dog was not very good. It was a bad trial.
Yeah.
We've won ribbons we didn't deserve, and we haven't got ribbons when we felt maybe we deserved it. So all things kind of even out, over the long haul.
Sure. Yeah.
But more often than not, the cream rises to the top.
Yeah.
Certainly over the course of the year, the better dogs are going to perform more often. So that's the aspect of the field trial. The problem with the field trial is that at best, one person's going home happy because second place thought they should have won. No placement, but they finished, thought they should have got a ribbon. It's just all that human nature stuff in competition. But if it's for the dogs, then the field trials are better for the breed. I don't believe the hunt tests are for the dogs. I think the hunt tests are for the people that go play golf.
I get it. And I agree with a lot of that. I think they're not my role.
Now that's spaniels only, okay?
Yeah.
I can only, those lab hunt tests. I mean,
no, I don't know them. I do know them. I've gunned for a few. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody should be so fortunate to have a master lab, right?
Yeah. Well, let's go to that. Not a master lab, but we have a flushing breed of any sort, long tail, short tail, tall, short dog, whatever. One of our highest priorities is steadiness. And steadiness means different things to different people. But for a flushing dog, I think you know where I'm going with this. There are dogs that will do all the things the opposite of that clumber. But when the bird gets in the air, they're chasing already.
Sounds like a good dog.
Okay. Carry on from there.
So, to me, that's a dog with strong prey drive.
Yeah.
And genetically, the dog, spaniels, flushing dogs should chase.
Yeah.
So now if the dog has been trained to be steady, different issue, right? The dog's not compliant and so forth. But purely from a genetic standpoint, dogs should chase. And that can look differently. Some chase and they're just rebels right from the get-go. And then some dogs chase, we've had dogs that chase flat out for 50 yards and that's it, they chased. And then we have other dogs that will chase flat out, as far as they can go. Yeah. So I don't think it's really any different. I'm just looking for that initial, I want it.
Yeah.
But I will say I'm a little surprised that your listeners find steadiness to be a priority, because the percentage of America flushing gun dogs that have a steady dog is so minuscule that, to be honest, we don't even recommend it.
Well, let's from the get-go, let's define that. Don't forget, the majority of these listeners are pointing breed owners.
Okay. Yep.
And I'll make that argument any day. I'm working really hard on it almost daily. But a significant number of folks who are listening right now have a Labrador or a Spaniel of one sort or another. And so let's talk about it in that context. You have a dog, and like you said, got strong, intense prey drive, and it's chasing all the time. Is there an argument for, them to sit on the flush?
Safety. That's the only argument.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I do think a dog that is steady to wing and shot is a better marker.
Yeah.
And I guided for years. I know all the arguments about birds are running, they got to get on them right away. Mm-hmm. Here would be my question. If you didn't shoot the bird, but your dog was just out there hunting and the bird was running around, every one of us would expect our dog to trail that and find it and put it up in the air. How come when we shoot it, we somehow say, oh, well, no, the dog's really at a disadvantage, so let him chase so he can mark it? That just defies logic to me. If they mark the fall, they should then be able to trail the bird out. Mm-hmm. And I know the air wash, right? I mean, the can change and so forth. But so I don't believe an unsteady dog marks better. I just don't believe that. But safety, a dog that has been through the steadiness process is clearly under better control. Yeah. Even if the steadiness gets sloppy, they're under better control than a dog that is not steady. The problem that I have with it is that it's not genetic.
Yeah.
This is a man-made thing, which means the odds are overwhelming that you're going to impact their flush.
Yeah.
You're going to soften their flush due to pressure or poor timing on your corrections and so forth. Okay, so that being said, wild birds in particular, the whole benefit of a flushing dog is to get those birds in the air as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And then the more aggressive the flush is, the faster that will happen. So I believe that if instead people were more focused on that their dog absolutely knew the hear command, problem would be solved. Not the safety problem, right? Because, dogs that are steady don't get shot generally, so there is a safety reason for it, clearly. But if you're someone that hunts a lot of, country where you're not crowded, okay, or you hunt by yourself, if your dog listened to hear, absolutely listen to it. You wouldn't have to worry about that dog running off 200 yards, disturbing game or any of those other things. So our dogs have to be steady. One, we're in business and, there's an optic. Right, obviously. Yeah. But the field trials, they have to be steady. Okay, the hunt tests, they only have to for master. They don't have to be steady for junior and senior. But I just, and I don't care what people do, whether they want to steady the dog or not. I just think they have to look at the pluses and minuses and what their life is. Because once you steady the dog, he will become unsteady if you don't maintain that. So every time you turn to shoot the bird, no different for pointing dogs, right? You turn to shoot the bird, it's very easy for that dog to take a step and you not even know it.
Yeah.
And before long, they're taking 2 steps, 3 steps. Well, you just put all this pressure on the dog and you're going to let it slip. And then because we're human, then when we see it, we're going to go back and hammer the dog for doing it wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
That's now we're back to fairness again, in my opinion.
Well, and there he's the advocate. I'm a believer too. That's Todd Agnew with Craney Hill Kennels. Learn more about their operation at spanieltraining.com. I'm Scott Linden. Learn more about us by sticking around. This is the Upland Nation podcast. Let's go to the other priority, and I'm intrigued by some ways that you approach this, and that is retrieving in general. Every one of our dogs we want every one of our dogs to retrieve better. I watched a video of yours, and you're holding what looks like a T-Rex femur bone in your hand, and the poor cocker, I think you're going to ask that dog to pick it up and carry it around.
Out of my hand?
Yeah.
I, of course, don't know what you were looking at. What we use the femur bone for is really for delivery.
Uh-huh.
And so fundamentally, we're asking the dogs to be an unnatural retriever, right? You hear everyone say, I want a natural retriever.
Yeah.
There's nothing in nature where they retrieve.
Yeah.
They grab it, they run off, and they eat it. That's natural. So what we're trying to do is at a very young age, we're trying to change the behavior. So we've all seen puppies that will pick something up, and they're almost teasing you, trying to get you engaged to try to get it from them.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we want to flip it on the dog. We want that behavior to be changed so that if they want to engage us, they have to give it to us.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Okay, so that femur bone is it's a long process, but in the beginning, it's the only toy the puppies get.
Huh.
So we want them in the house, and once they're comfortable picking up and running around with that, we don't give it to them. They just have to arbitrarily decide, there's femur bones all over the floor.
Ah, okay.
So that becomes the only toy they have. So once they're doing that, then we'll sit on the floor. That doesn't take long for them trying to get us to take it, right? To play, they want us to play that game.
Okay.
And we'll just spend weeks ignoring them. And then before long, not only are they trying to get us to take it, but they're in my face, shoving their face in my face.
Uh-huh.
And so then I may reach up, and the key is don't ever take it. Just hold it right wherever it is.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And as soon as they give it up, which they will, as soon as they give it up, we just say their name, and then they figure out when we say their name, they take it again, then they run off.
Okay.
Okay, so we're just flipping the game that if they want us to be engaged, they got to bring and give us that.
I love
it. Now you'll see older dogs do it all the time, right? They grab slippers, but those tend to be trained dogs at that point. So that's how we started. That's the whole femur bone premise. And the reason we use the femur bone is because it's good for their teeth anyway. And, all those types of things.
All right. So let's break it down. We got a dog that is ready to learn to retrieve.
Okay.
What's your basic plan, start to finish, step by step, in abbreviated version? Starts with what and ends with what?
Okay, so ours are starting at 7 weeks or 8 weeks whenever we get the puppy.
Yeah.
Okay, and so we're going to start with that femur bone. While they're learning that, right, because it takes some time for them to figure everything out that I just described.
Yeah.
We're using the clicker, and we're through targeting, we're getting them to touch a piece of PVC pipe.
Where is that?
That's in the house.
Okay, but where's the pipe? Is it on the floor too, or what?
No. It's in my hand.
Right on.
Okay. So it's just a targeting drill.
Yeah.
So every time they touch the pipe, they get the treat, and then after a while, they're touching it all the time, so they no longer get the click and treat, and then maybe they lick it, and they'll click that, and so we're just incrementally moving it. Anything that gets it closer to them, open their mouth and putting their mouth on it. Right, so there's a long process of that, and as they start to show more of the behavior we want, we stop rewarding the beginning behaviors.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we go through that, and then eventually, they have their mouth on it, and then they kind of hold it, and then again we continue until we can let go of it. Right, and of course they drop it right away, the first bunch of times. So we just go through that, and then eventually we get to the point where they're picking it up off of our feet and looking up at us with the pipe in their mouth. Okay, so this is all just for presentation and delivery.
Yeah. One of the many steps we've written down.
That's right. So now that the aspect of retrieving, which I believe retrieving is any dog that will run out there and not even pick it up, but show interest in it, to me that's a dog that retrieves.
Yeah.
Then there's all these other components that then do the entire process the way we want it. So while all the stuff is going on inside when the puppies are young, outside we may throw a couple tennis balls. We may, throw a couple, lock wing pigeons. We never use frozen birds. We almost never throw dead birds. Okay. I find dogs muck with, carcass, dead stuff a whole lot more than live stuff.
I'll be darned.
But all I'm looking for outside is the dog to show me that it's willing to retrieve, meaning it's willing to run out there and show some interest in whatever I threw. So I am not a keep throwing retrieves guy.
Yeah.
I am, if the dog will show me that, I'm all about delivery.
Okay.
Because almost all retrieving issues are around you. There's very few dogs that run out there, pick it up, and muck with it out there. There's very few dogs that run out there, pick it up, and then leave it. If you watch, they tend to pick it up and then they drop it as they're coming back to you.
Okay.
So the problem is you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so that's why our whole focus is on the delivery. Again, give them a reason to want to come to you, to want to hold it in front of you. So change in the game that they need to give it to me so that they can get it back.
You know, last week, the guy I go to for my wire hairs, and a friend and an incredible chucker hunter, said the same thing in different words. It is entire. You guys are on the same wavelength, and now so am I. I never thought about it the way you've both described it, but it really is about the second half of that trip out and back, isn't it?
Because that dog is telling you it's feeling pressure of some sort, either avoidance pressure, correction pressure, intimidation, whatever it is. That's most retrieving issues are right around the handler.
Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of people will force break.
Yeah.
Right? And they'll force break regardless whether they think the dog needs it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and we force broke all our dogs when we were guiding, right? Because my dog's not going to drop a bird, and he loses the only bird he shot in the week of hunting.
Yeah.
Okay. So, that would be embarrassing to me. So, but now
I'm used to it, by the way.
we only force break if I think that's the missing component to compete on a national level. It's brutal for me. It's brutal for the dog. However, I do 100% believe in it. It is the only way to truly make it reliably clean, regardless of situation. Okay, I just don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, well, it's not easy for both parties. We all know that, and in fact, I don't care what you say. And we read this. This is the first sentence in most of those methods. When you're both done, you'll have a better bond.
Yeah. I don't know about that.
You just answered it perfectly, Todd Agnew. Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, let's go hunting for a few minutes, and then I'm going to turn you loose to probably muck out kennels or something glamorous. But if we're going hunting with you, put yourself back in your guide days. What is the one piece of gear that you're going to ensure that you have in your vest or that we are carrying in our vest that we might not normally think about?
Oh boy. Well, water without everyone should be thinking about that, but particularly where you are out there. And but other than water, I'm kind of a minimalist.
Yeah.
I don't really carry a first aid kit. It's in the truck.
Yeah.
I don't really carry it. I generally have a multi-tool.
Yeah.
Type of knife. I don't even go in the woods with a compass.
Yeah.
I just, I guess these days probably hearing protection is, pretty prevalent with us.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know what to, I can't think of anything that is, I think everybody should be thinking about the stuff we carry as a general rule. I can't think of anything, that Todd Agnew carries that people maybe aren't thinking about
already.
Mentally, I think a clear, calm head. Remember, the dog's the one with the nose.
Yeah.
So let's remember that.
Well, I should put an extra one of those somewhere in one of those pockets. And if we're hunting, and you did hunt the prairies, and you have, and now you hunt mainly the woods. Mm-hmm. But one or the other of those, what is a hunting strategy that you use that we haven't considered yet?
Well, I think all game, whether it's birds or big game or just wildlife, is always in the transition zones. Okay, they're coming or going as a general. They're on the way to roost, on the way back to food, whatever it is. So wherever you're going to hunt, I think you pause and see if you can see where the transition is. And of course, when we're out there in those prairies, particularly in Kansas, it's relatively flat. But if you really pay attention, it's not flat.
Yeah.
There is a transition out there, and you always hunt the transitions first.
Well,
don't just go out to some blank field.
And I get related questions a lot because I spend a lot of time out there, and people say, well, it's all the same. It's not flat as a pancake. We understand that, but let's just take a prairie. And Kansas is good because you know it, I know it. How are we going to tell where the transitions are?
Well, the easiest one is topography.
Yeah.
So all of those pancake flat fields, generally, because that was all farmed ground, they generally have some depression running through them. Mm-hmm. Now, it could be 6 inches.
Yeah.
And so with cover, it's hard to see. But, 2 ways, if you can't tell through topography, you tend to be able to see the difference in the cover. So where there was water, you tend to have thicker cover.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, find that transition. Don't go out into the middle of the field. The transition may be the gravel road is on one side.
There you go. Yeah. Edges.
Yep.
Another way to look at it. But the middle of the field, probably the last Hungarian partridge hunt I did last season, it was blowing a gale and it was about 9 degrees. We're shortcutting across a wheat stubble field because it's so cold we want to quit. And son of a gun, if Flick doesn't, my dog, he doesn't lock up in the middle of this field pointing at nothing. And then 50 Huns got up in front of him. And we got there too late, of course, but when we got there, we realized, just like you just said, Tim, it was a foot lower. You couldn't tell from a distance, but when you got there, it was a little depression. It was a little bowl. It's a very shallow bowl, but it was lower than everything else. That stuff works, but
it's how nature lives.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, your grouse hunting, right? They come out onto the edge to grit out onto the road during the heat of the day. They go back in and loaf in generally lighter cover, and they're just hanging out. Yeah. And at night they got to come out because they got to feed, and then they're looking, to go roost and find thicker cover overnight. So it's the same system for all wildlife. Yeah. That's why, like out where you are, if you go to Idaho and those types of things, why are the game trails? Every living animal is using the same game trail.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I see it out here. On our trails, I can find a deer hoof print and a quail track right next to each other.
Yeah, it's uncanny how that, but obviously it's the reason they live. It's just the way it's programmed for survival. So that's the thing. Really try to pay attention to the transitions.
Yeah. Okay, last question. But you've been there and done this, and you do it more than all of us. But but particularly with flushing breeds, we don't have the clanging bell and the fire horn going off saying, "Hey, I found a bird. I'm holding still and pointing my nose right at it. Get ready to shoot." No, we have to be ready in different ways when we're walking behind a flushing breed. And then we need to be able to shoot better. What is the process that if I was your client, we were out in the woods somewhere, you were still guiding, what would you tell me about watching the dog, getting ready to shoot, positioning myself, foot location, all of that? Take us to school on shooting.
Definitely not a shooter, but there are very few people that truly are. That's why those shooting instructors are phenomenal people. I think that to be relaxed. Okay, I think all my years of guiding, the overwhelming reason that people miss is because they're surprised by the flush. Yeah, and in fairness, we get to see that flush on a daily basis, where most hunters, when we're guiding, it might be the only week of the year that they see it. So, it's not the easiest thing to be prepared for. Spaniels are known to be very spaniely, excitable. And so, people will always say, oh, the dog always looks like it's on bird.
Yeah.
There are differences, but some spaniels are more animated than others, where their tail action really accelerates, or they tend to be acting more manic.
Yeah.
Okay. Where, like, when we ran labs, which we trained them just like our spaniels, but
Yeah.
when we ran labs, they also would get animated, but because the tail was longer, it was a longer motion, so it didn't move as rapidly, but it was certainly more rapid than when they were just questing.
Sure.
So if you can watch the dog initially when there's no birds.
Oh, establish a baseline.
Yeah, try to get comfortable for what that dog looks like, and then say, I don't know if he's on a bird or not, but he's acting different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then just try to stay relaxed, because who knows which way the bird's going to go.
Yeah.
So that whole, like, get your feet ready, I don't know. I mean, in the grouse woods, we don't guide grouse hunters, but when our group is up there with us, we do tell them, try to see where are the escape routes.
Yeah.
Out in the prairie, it tends to be more open.
Yeah.
But in the woods, you're looking for the escape routes, because that's the only place you can shoot anyway.
Well, yeah, and then there's the one that I learned from the CEO at the Rough Grouse Society, and that is stand in a place where you can actually mount and swing your gun.
Yeah. That's again, things we take for granted.
Yeah, well, that's why I asked this dumb question of experts.
Yeah, I think everybody wants to shoot a bird in the worst way. I mean, it is hunting for a reason, right? It's not catch and release. But I think being able to relax and enjoy the day will give you clearer thought to just let the gun go to where you're looking and pull on the trigger.
Yeah, I'm all for it, and that's a good way to end this discussion, which I've learned so much. Todd Agnew with Craney Hill Kennels, spanieltraining.com is where you learn more about their philosophy. We didn't even get around to the online stuff you have. You have an online training course and forum and so many other things there that are a wealth of information to us. Todd will do this again sometime. In the meanwhile, good luck as you jump. You're preparing hard now for the fall trial season. I wish you the best. Thank you. Appreciate your being a part of the Upland Nation podcast.
Thanks for having me. Be well.
Oh, I will, and I'm sure you will too. Thank you again, Todd. Hey, we've got more to come here. We're going to talk about a place for everything come this hunting season when you're loading your rig, preparing it for the season. That'll be coming up in just a few moments. First, we're brought to you in part by Pointer Shotguns. I've been just raving over the case coloring on that new side-by-side they sent me. It's just incredible, and so everybody else is too. Take it to the range, and everybody wants to shoulder that thing, but they really want to open it up and look at that case coloring. Beyond that, you can also get many of their shotguns with nickel-plated receivers, or in those Cerakote colors, olive drab green, kind of a sport utility gun, or a bronze or a gray. You will certainly stand out in the duck blind or at the sporting clays range, or you'll have the coolest gun in the field, that's for darn sure. Pick your model, pick your retailer, watch a few videos from me. It's all at pointershotguns.com. Whether it's a side-by-side, a semi-auto, or an over and under, they've got something for everybody. pointershotguns.com. And sageandbreaker.com is where you pick up all the stuff to store and clean your new shotgun. And by the way, the range bag, back in stock, all 5-star reviews. If you're looking for another heirloom item for your shooting inventory, there's one for you. If you have a lot of ammo in there, or a lot of, dog care stuff, hey, yeah, just because it's called a range bag, you can put whatever you want in there. Sign up for the email list. You won't miss out on future sales, fathers, and new products for everybody. That's where I'm going to go next time I need a gift for one of my friends. It's all at sageandbreaker.com. Yeah, all of that talk about libations after the hunt got me to thinking about sitting on the tailgate and relaxing at the end of a great hunt. And that got me to looking in the back of my truck, and I was out there moving things around and kind of restocking for fishing season. If we ever get one, the water's running so high everywhere. But I was looking around thinking, I really need to square away all my gear for hunting season. And I'm not going to talk about all the stuff I carry in the back of my truck, but I am going to just remind you, now's the time to start coming up with a strategy. Yeah, place for everything and everything in its place. Let's just talk about the doggy side of things. And here's how I got everything arranged. I'm lucky enough to have a canopy on the top of my pickup truck bed with windows that will open all the way on both sides. So what I do is put all the things together that I'll need at any given time for a particular task. For example, the end of the day, I'm going to feed the dog. All right, so the dog's crate is reachable from right there. I can open up one of the doors and put stuff in and out, starting with the dog. But his dog food is near the crate. The supplements that I use are near the dog food, which is near the water container, which is near the bowl. And then, because quite often when you're somewhere you need a leash, that leash is right near all that other stuff. It just eliminates things to worry about. All you're trying to do quite often, especially on the road, but especially at the beginning and the end of a hunt, is make life simpler so that you don't have to check your list all the time, mental or written down. Organize it so that everything is in the right place at the right time, and life will be good again, no matter how you shot on that hunt. And that road trip message was brought to you by TrulockChokes.com. Yeah, when I'm organizing my shooting stuff, my choke tubes are all right next to my shotguns, for example. And if you are wanting to learn more about how a good shotgun choke works, from start to finish, they'll take you to school. Just go to TrulockChokes.com, go to the frequently asked questions. That's your beginning. And from there, just poke around. They've got over 2,000 different shotgun tubes for any shooting situation, any type of bird, and any type of shotgun. Learn more at TrulockChokes.com. Well, Todd Agnew at Craney Hill Kennels, thank you so much for being part of the Upland Nation podcast. Sure learn a lot every time we talk. Someday maybe we'll meet in the grouse woods. If you want to learn more about Todd, go to spanieltraining.com. If you want to learn more about how your peers think about stuff, whether it's how you celebrate a hunt or how you're training or hunting, visit one of our social platforms, Wing Shooting USA or Upland Nation Facebook pages, now on Instagram and Twitter, of course, so watch for all of those. Thank you for participating in our online discussions. And those who left a rating or a review, I owe you one. Hope to see you in the woods sometime, or more than likely at the range. We are also made possible, and I thank all of our sponsors. Yeah, without them, we wouldn't be here. We, you and me, not the royal we. Sage and Breaker Gun Care Products, Pointer Shotguns, Purina Pro Plan Sport, Dog Food, Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, MidValleyClays.com, TrulockChokes.com, and every week there's something new to read, study, view, or listen to at FindBirdHuntingSpots.com. Hope to see you there. Hope to have you back next time. Thanks for listening. I'm Scott Linden. This has been the Upland Nation Podcast.